Born in 1988 on the parched lands of Burkina Faso, Ibrahim Traoré dreamed of more than an ordinary life from a young age. His family made a modest living through farming in a small village. But young Ibrahim felt the winds of change blowing through the city. His father was a former soldier who instilled discipline and courage in him. However, Traoré knew he was destined for more than just being a soldier. Throughout his education, he learned about Africa's history, the deep wounds of colonialism, and the ongoing economic subjugation of the continent. While studying political science at university, he quickly stood out among his peers. He believed he had to fight for Africa's freedom. Political upheavals in his country in 2015 pushed Traoré into active politics. He joined the army and distinguished himself in difficult missions. But the real turning point came in 2022. Following a military coup in Burkina Faso, the young leader swiftly rose to power. He was no longer just a soldier, but a revolutionary determined to change the destiny of the continent. In May 2025, on a hot evening in Ouagadougou, preparations for the African Development Conference were complete. The Grand Hall hosted politicians, business people, and activists from all over the continent. Ibrahim Traoré stepped onto the stage to deliver the opening speech. Behind him, the flag of Burkina Faso waved, symbolizing his leadership and determination. "Today," he said, "we live a historic moment for Africa's destiny. For years, powers who have belittled us, exploited our resources, and ignored our voice, are now given 72 hours. During this period, especially Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu must adopt a new policy that respects Africa and protects our interests." Every word echoed throughout the hall. Whispers rose among the attendees. Some applauded this bold move, while others reacted with apprehension. Continuing his speech, Traoré added, "Africa's honor is non-negotiable. We have the right to determine our own destiny. If our call is not answered positively within 72 hours, we will come back with new strategies. This is not just a warning but the proclamation of Africa's new awakening." The atmosphere in the hall changed instantly. Traoré's determination and courage deeply affected the conference participants. Some applauded, some thought deeply, but all united in one truth: Africa would no longer remain silent. It was the second day of the ultimatum. People across Africa were discussing Traoré's words. That day, a bombshell hit global media. A reporter leaked documents from the secret G7 summit to the world. These documents detailed the manipulations and pressure strategies used to control Africa's rich, natural resources. Media executive, on camera. Today, we have secret documents revealing how the world's most powerful countries plan to control and divide Africa's resources. These documents show how Africa has been exploited. This leak shocked African leaders. Traoré saw the leak as an opportunity and immediately held a press conference. Traoré, at the microphone. "These documents are concrete proof of systematic exploitation and oppression against us for years. But we will no longer be silenced. We will do everything to protect Africa's honor, independence, and future." The media, social networks, and streets echoed with this statement. Youth took to the streets. Newspapers filled their headlines with Traoré's leadership and the G7 plans. Netanyahu realized the situation in Israel was rapidly changing. Traoré's ultimatum and the G7 leak placed him in a tough position. Netanyahu's advisor, in the office, Prime Minister, Africa's unity and reaction were unexpected. Traoré is a serious leader. International pressure is rising. Netanyahu, firmly, "We will use our diplomatic channels. But we will not give up. Africa is our strategic partner. We must control this situation." Tense discussions were ongoing in Netanyahu's office. Outside, however, African people were uniting with increasing strength. In major cities across Africa, squares were overflowing. Millions from Senegal to South Africa, Nigeria to Egypt supported Traoré's call. "Young activist, this is our moment. The voice we have been waiting for is rising. Traoré is our voice, our leader." Traoré's 72-hour ultimatum created a major impact on the world stage. But the greatest battles were fought in unseen arenas, diplomatic tables. In the official palace of Ouagadougou, Traoré and his close advisors were in an intense meeting. Meanwhile, a special envoy from Israel had secretly arrived in the country. Advisor 1. Mr. President, a delegation from Israel has arrived. They requested a meeting, but our conditions are clear. No concessions. Traoré. Resolute. They must accept our terms. Africa's honor is non-negotiable. We are here not just for dialogue but for equality. Outside the palace, media and public closely followed the process. Traoré valued openness and transparency, informing the public of every move. As the 72 hours neared their end, excitement and anxiety filled Africa. Twitter was trending with hashtag 72-hour ultimatum. TVs broadcasted live updates. Journalist. Live broadcast. Prime Minister Netanyahu's statement is awaited. Traoré's 72-hour process will be a turning point not only for Africa, but for global power balances. African Union leaders convened and issued a joint statement. Africa's honor is non-negotiable. We stand behind Traoré. Breaking news arrived. Netanyahu announced launching a new cooperation process with Africa. Netanyahu's speech. We are entering a new era to strengthen our relations with Africa and protect our mutual interests. We are ready to cooperate with Mr. Traoré and African leaders. However, many African leaders and people were skeptical about the sincerity of this statement. Traoré remained calm and determined. This is only the beginning. He said. Traoré's 72-hour ultimatum was not only a political crisis but the start of a period that changed Africa's destiny. He became a symbol not only for Burkina Faso, but for the whole continent. Traoré looked out the window while checking messages on his phone. Congratulatory messages from world leaders were coming. Yet, his mind focused on one thing: true independence for Africa. Traoré, thinking, this victory is only a small step. The real struggle begins now. I must work to bring justice, freedom, and prosperity to every corner of the continent. Across Africa, his leadership inspired new generation politicians and activists. Many young people took to the streets for change. It was time to break the chains of the past. Under Traoré's leadership, Africa stepped into a new era. Although Netanyahu's cooperation call was met with suspicion by some, this new chapter was important for Africa's voice on the world stage scene. African Youth Conference. Thousands of young people gathered for the continent's future. Traoré took the stage and addressed the youth. Traoré, young people, we are Africa's future. We must act together to defend our honor, rights, and gain true freedom. This is only the beginning. The youth applauded enthusiastically. Traoré's determination had sparked hope across the continent. At midnight in his office in Ouagadougou, Traoré was lost in deep thought. All eyes of the continent were on him. Every decision affected not only Burkina Faso but all Africa. He tried to stand strong under this heavy burden. Traoré, in a voice. Everything is happening so fast. On one side, the hope of the people. On the other, international pressures. But no giving up. These lands must remain free. We must make our voice heard. There is still much work to do. A few years ago, as a young soldier, he dreamed of a different life. Today, this heavy responsibility sometimes left him alone but never extinguished the fire inside. Meanwhile, in Tel Aviv, a different atmosphere filled Netanyahu's office. Africa's rise was an unexpected challenge for Israel. Netanyahu was holding tense meetings with advisors. Advisor 1. Prime Minister, if we don't engage directly with Traoré, other African countries will follow him. That would be a strategic loss. Netanyahu. But we must act quickly. We must convince both our Western allies and domestic public. We cannot afford to lose ground in Africa. Political struggles in Israel complicated this process. Netanyahu had to take careful steps both inside and outside. In major African cities, youth heeded Traoré's call. Millions organized on social media, determined to fight for their rights and future. Young activist, live. This is our time. The long-awaited change is at the door. Under Traoré's leadership, we will make our voices heard worldwide. Hundreds of thousands organized peaceful but firm protests, shaking power centers across the continent. Though direct, economy, security, and political cooperation were on the table. Traoré bargained, prioritizing Africa's interests. Diplomat. Both sides want to win. But mutual trust is weak. This process may reshape international power balances. The 72 hours announced by Traoré were nearly up. Across Africa, people awaited anxiously and hopefully. News channels and social media covered non-stop. Live reporter. We are entering the final hours. Netanyahu's decision will shape Africa's and the world's future. Traoré remains steadfast, holding his people united. This process has become a symbol of the continent's unity and resistance. Finally, the awaited moment came. Netanyahu addressed the nation, somewhat tense but determined. Netanyahu. Today, we are initiating a new cooperation process with Africa. We have learned from past mistakes and will work together for our mutual interests. We are open to dialogue with Mr. Traoré and African leaders. However, some African leaders and the public remained cautious. Traoré gave an official statement, calm but hopeful. Traoré. This is a beginning. Africa must stand stronger to take its future into its own hands. This process will reveal the true power of our people. Netanyahu's statement stirred mixed reactions in Africa. Some saw it as a historic opportunity, others remained suspicious. But Traoré knew the fight was far from over. Traoré's advisor. Mr. President, this will be a long and tough process. But with your leadership, Africa is no longer a passive observer but an active player. At midnight in the presidential palace in Ouagadougou, Traoré sat over a large map studying reports from different parts of Africa. Outside, the wind gently blew. The contrast between street silence and his inner turmoil was striking. This struggle is not just a political game. It is a war for the heart of the continent. Every step must be right. A wrong move affects millions. His close advisor entered. Advisor. Mr. President, the people are waiting. You are their hope. You are not alone. Traoré smiled faintly, but the fatigue in his eyes was undeniable. In New York and Washington centers, Traoré's moves sparked intense discussions. Western powers took Africa's rise and Traoré's influence seriously. U.S. state official. Traoré is not just a leader. He shapes Africa's future. We must carefully decide how to engage with him. European Union representative. As the West, we must cooperate with Africa but also protect our interests. Traoré's demands will initiate a new balancing process. In cities across Africa, squares and streets were still filled. Youth, women, elders, all united for one goal, a free and dignified Africa's at dawn. Traoré planned the new day. The struggle would be long and challenging. But Africa was writing its own history. Traoré, determined. Victory in this journey comes through unity and determination. Africa's honor is in our hands. We have much work ahead. Following Traoré's ultimatum, the African Union held an extraordinary meeting. Leaders from across the continent gathered, engaging in intense discussions to establish a unified strategy. African Union chairperson. Today, we are making history. We must act together for economic independence, political sovereignty, and the preservation of our cultural dignity. The decisions made at the meeting strengthened Africa's stance against external interference. Traoré's leadership accelerated this process, uniting nations under a common cause. Social media platforms and international news outlets amplified Traoré's bold statements and actions. His words reached millions, representing the new face of Africa. International newspaper headline. Africa's rising star, Ibrahim Traoré, changing the world in 72 hours. Netanyahu and Western leaders closely monitored developments in Africa. They launched new economic deals, diplomatic talks, and media campaigns to sway the continent's direction in their favor. Netanyahu's advisor. Traoré is tough to neutralize, but through diplomacy and economic pressure, we can restore balance. Traoré prepared his countermeasures. The young leader laid out a long-term roadmap, aimed at uniting the continent and achieving economic and political independence. Traoré. Today we fight not just for victory, but to secure our tomorrow. Traoré held frequent talks with leaders from all corners of the continent. His message was clear. Unity and solidarity are paramount. As a result, a new economic alliance plan was devised. African Economic Union meeting. By moving together, we will reduce external dependency. We will manage our resources and determine our future ourselves. In Israel, Netanyahu faced strong opposition within his own party. Some criticized his Africa policy and demanded a tougher stance. Netanyahu's advisor, Prime Minister, either you cooperate with Africa or risk losing ground on the global stage. Africa's young population actively supported Traoré's leadership on social media. Hashtags like #AfriCorona and #TraoréVictory garnered millions of shares. The time is ours. We will write our future. Traoré shows us the way. The world press began to recognize Africa's transformation. Traoré's leadership shattered colonial-era narratives, heralding a new balance of power. This is not only a new chapter for Africa but for the entire world. Ibrahim Traoré's bold speeches and the 72-hour ultimatum rippled across the global arena. At the United Nations General Assembly, Africa's rise and reckoning with colonial legacies became key agenda items. UN General Assembly President: Africa's right to self-determination is indisputable. Traoré's words have become a symbol of this struggle. In Israel, Netanyahu entered a challenging phase, facing criticism both domestically and internationally for his Africa policy. Netanyahu: I must confront Traoré, but this battle won't be easy. Every step must be taken carefully. Africa's youth shouted for freedom and dignity in the streets. Under Traoré's leadership, peaceful yet resolute protests enveloped the continent. Young activist, microphone: we are the true power of Africa. The voice is ours now. Together with Traoré, we write our destiny. The sun rose over the African continent as Ibrahim Traoré stepped before cameras to deliver a historic speech. After years of hardship, struggle, and opposition, this moment was not just an end but a new beginning for Africans. Traoré: today, I stand here not only as the voice of my country but of all Africa. Our 72-hour ultimatum was a challenge, yet it was also a flame of hope and resistance. This flame will continue to burn in every corner of our continent. Our fight is not only against external powers but also against injustice, poverty, and darkness within. True freedom is equality, justice, and strength together. The hall erupted in applause as global television broadcast this historic moment live. Traoré's words resonated in millions of hearts, not only in Africa but worldwide, stirring winds of hope and change. Epilogue: the road is longer, but the light is brighter. Ibrahim Traoré's leadership became a symbol of Africa's new position on the global stage. Challenges, obstacles, and political games were far from over. Yet, the continent had begun to write its own story. Youth, women, elders, voices from different countries, united to build an honorable future for Africa. Traoré's ultimatum lasted only minutes, but the legacy it left was the beginning of a resistance and hope that would endure for generations, and the world would never see Africa the same way again.